Hi there, my name is Ian O'Donnell. In this video we're going to be talking about chromatic mediants. Chromatic mediants are used in a lot of film music and video game music, and it's very stylistic of the genre. So first off, let's break down this term. Let's start with mediants. What's a mediant? Okay, here are the diatonic chords in the key of C major. This note right here is called the mediant, and this note is called the submediant. From these two notes we build these two chords, so these are considered our mediant chords. Now what does chromatic mean? Chromatic means any note outside of the diatonic key. So for example, in the key of C, a B flat would be a chromatic note. So a chromatic mediant chord is when you take a chord built off the mediant or the submediant and you alter some of the pitches, making them chromatic. Here's a chart that shows all the alterations you can make to mediant chords in a major key. So let's break this down further. Here's a 1 going to a minor 3. That's normal, that's diatonic. If we wanted to make it a chromatic mediant, let's go ahead and make it a 1 going to major 3. Simply raise the third of the chord a half step, and now it's a major chord. Now let's see what a 1 to flat major 3 looks like. To do this, flat the mediant note, and then stack up a major triad above it. Or you can just lower the root and the fifth down a half step. Finally, we have the 1 to flat minor 3. For this chord, you're going to lower all of your notes down a half step. Okay, so here's a common 1 to minor 6 motion. This is diatonic within the key of C. Looking back at our chart, we can see that this is very similar to how the 3 chord is altered. Let's start by going from 1 to a major 6. Again, you simply raise the third by a half step. Next, let's take a look at the flat major 6. You're going to flat both the root and the fifth of this chord. Or you can think of it as flatting the submediant note and then building up a major triad from there. Finally, we have the 1 to flat minor 6. Again, you're going to simply shift all the notes in your minor 6 chord down a half step. Now what does all this look like in a minor key? Here are your diatonic chords you normally find in a minor key. Our mediant chords are still the same, they're the 3 and the 6. The only difference is, in a minor key, the 3 and the 6 are major, diatonically speaking. Here's a chart of all the minor chromatic mediants you'll find. Here is your normal diatonic 1 and 3 chord. I'm going to go ahead and put all the flats that are within the key in red so that you can easily see what's going on. The first chromatic mediant is making the 3 a minor 3. This is very simple, you just flat the third. Next, we have a sharp minor 3. So we're actually not going to see sharps here, we're going to see natural signs because these notes were already flat. So we're actually bringing them up a half step by making them natural. You can think of this by either raising the mediant up a half step and then building a minor triad, or you can just think of raising the root and the fifth up by a half step and not altering the middle note. The last chord is a sharp major 3. In order to do this, you're just going to raise everything up by a half step. And this is where things get a little bit confusing because you'll start to see both flats, natural signs, and sharps all within the same couple of measures. This is just something that's going to happen when you're messing with chromatic music. Okay, just for good measure, let's look at the minor 1 going to the major 6. This is diatonic. Here are all the flats that are normally found within the key. Okay, so we have a 1 going to a minor 6. You're simply going to flat the third for that. We have a 1 going to a sharp minor 6. You can either think of raising the submediant and then building up a minor chord, or you can just sharp both the root and the fifth. And then we have the sharp major 6, which is when you just move everything up by a half step. So that's the basic concept in both major and in minor. Now, just to solidify what we've learned, let's look at 2 more examples. here is a normal 1 to 3 motion in the key of E. I'm going to go ahead and put the sharps in for you. So maybe we want to make this a 1 to a major 3. There you go. We know that we just sharped the third. Now let's say we want to make it a 1 to a flat major 3. Here's how that would look. And if we wanted to make it a 1 to a flat minor 3, it would look like this. There you go. Let's look at another example in minor and going to the 6th. This is D minor. And I'm going to go ahead and put that 1 flat in there for you. So this is a 1 going to a major 6. Let's go ahead and make it a 1 going to a minor 6. There you go. We're going to flat the third. Now let's make this a 1 going to a sharp minor 6. It's going to look like that. And now let's make it a 1 going to a sharp major 6. It'll look like that. Okay, so now that we've gotten the theory out of the way, let's talk about how we can actually apply these to our composition. First off, you know how these kind of function. Whenever you're playing a chromatic mediant, commonly you're going to go from your 1 chord to a chromatic mediant, then back to the 1 chord. You can go from the 1 chord to a chromatic mediant, to the 1 chord, to a different chromatic mediant, but then back to a 1 chord. That's commonly how it's going to work. You're going to go 1, chromatic mediant, 1 again. Same if it's in minor, it's the same thing applies. Okay, the next thing to talk about is voice leading. You're going to find that with these chromatic mediants, you're usually going to have one note that's going to sustain through the whole, 1 going to the chromatic mediant back to the 1, or it's going to be half steps. There's a lot of stepwise motion. Anyways, there's lots of opportunity for very smooth voice leading. So here's an example in SATB. So this doesn't just apply to SATB. You can use this in orchestral composition. You might want to retain a note like in the French horn or something. So take that into consideration when you are writing with chromatic mediants. So the last thing I want to talk about is writing melodies over chromatic mediants. So the quickest, easiest way is to just arpeggiate chords. Arpeggiate over whatever chord you're playing. So for example, if we went from a 1 here, C, to a flat 6, A flat, we could play something like this. It's pretty simple, but commonly when you arpeggiate chords like that, they'll be very memorable, the melodies you write, and you see John Williams do this all the time in his compositions. Pretty much any example of him using chromatic mediants, he's almost always arpeggiating the chords. So if you would like to have, some more diatonic motion, you can just use scales. And the simple, quickest, easy way to do this is if you're, again, let's go from C to maybe E major, and then back to C, right? So you would just play a C scale over the C chord, and over the E, or major 3, you would just play an E major scale, then back to C. Simple enough. And if you actually kind of implement the two using both arpeggios of the chords and playing whatever given scale will go along with the chord, that can sound very nice. Or something along those lines. A few advanced techniques you might want to start using. Experiment around with suspended chords. So if you're going from a 1 to a major 3, again, you could do something like, and then do like a sus2. I don't know. It's just something you can play around with and see if you find some sounds you like. Also, another kind of advanced tip, you can use chromatic mediants to modulate, but that's pretty advanced theory. I don't really want to get into that in this video. But if you would like to do some further research, there's definitely more you can learn on this subject. Thank you for watching this video. Let me know in the comments if you had any questions, if maybe there was something I didn't quite explain or something you want to know more about. I'd be happy to help you. Also, let me know if there's any theory topics you want me to cover in the future. I do plan to make more theory videos, both basic and advanced, so stay tuned for those.